Level 1, Data Analyst Intern. You got the internship. You applied to 47 places. You heard back from 3. You took this one because it was the only offer with a desk that wasn't in someone's basement. Your laptop is slow. The Wi-Fi is inconsistent. You don't have access to half the tools yet because IT hasn't approved your request. It's been 2 weeks. Your first task is a spreadsheet. Clean this data, they said. Simple, they said. You open the file. There are 11,000 rows. Half the dates are in different formats. Some cells have text where numbers should be. Someone used color coding as a data system. You spend 4 hours on it. You Google things you're ashamed to Google. How to remove duplicates in Excel. What is a VLOOKUP? Why is my formula not working? You fix it. You send it back. Your supervisor opens it, scrolls for 30 seconds, says, looks good, and moves on. That's it. That's your feedback. You're paid $18 an hour. You're spending $14 a day on coffee and commute. The math is not working in your favor. You sit next to a senior analyst. You watch what they do. They move fast. They don't panic. They have keyboard shortcuts for everything. You write the shortcuts down on a sticky note. You're not contributing yet. Not really, but you're watching. And watching is how it starts. Level 2, Junior Data Analyst. You got the full-time offer. $52,000 a year. You did the math. After taxes and rent, you have about $400 a month of breathing room. Not comfortable. Our first real project lands on your desk. Pull the weekly sales numbers and put them in a report. Sounds easy? It isn't. The database has 5 tables and no documentation. You ask where the documentation is. People look at each other. There isn't any. There never was. That's just how it is here. You write your first SQL query. It runs, it crashes, you fix the syntax, it runs again. Turns 2 million rows when you expected 500. You ask for help. An older analyst looks at your query, finds the missing join condition in about 12 seconds. They don't make you feel bad about it, but you feel bad about it anyway. You deliver the report late. Your manager doesn't say anything. You don't know if that's good or bad. You assume bad. You go home and watch SQL tutorials for 2 hours. Next week, you deliver the report on time. Slowly, painfully, the work gets easier. Not easy. Easier. You're learning that being a junior analyst means doing the work no one else wants to do without complaining, and doing it well enough that someone notices. Most days, no one notices. You do it anyway. Level 3, Data Analyst. 2 years in. New title, small raise, $78,000. You own projects now, full projects. Someone gives you a business question and expects you back in 2 weeks with an answer. Not a spreadsheet, not a data dump, an answer. Questions are messier than you expected. Are our customers happy? Happy. What does that mean in a database? You figure out a proxy metric. You pull the data, build a dashboard, present it. Someone in the room asks why you chose that metric and not a different one. You defend your choice, mostly. There are days the data doesn't cooperate. You run a query 3 times and get 3 slightly different numbers. You don't know which one is right. You dig. You find a data pipeline issue that's been corrupting records for 6 weeks. Nobody knew. Fix it. You rerun everything. You update the report. You don't get a trophy for that. You get an email that says, thanks for catching this. You screenshot it. You're not sure why. Maybe for the hard days. Your salary sounds decent until you realize the engineer 2 desks over makes $140,000 doing adjacent work. You feel something about that. You're not sure what. You keep showing up. You keep delivering. You're getting good at this. Level 4, Senior Data Analyst. 4 years, $115,000. You are now the person the junior analysts come to when they're stuck. You used to be them. Remember the feeling of being stuck and not wanting to admit it. You help them quickly, make it look easy. It isn't easy. You've just seen this exact problem 11 times. Your stakeholders trust you now. That trust took years to build. You know exactly how fast it can disappear. One bad analysis, one number that doesn't hold up under scrutiny. One time you present something with confidence and get torn apart in a meeting. You've been torn apart in a meeting. Once, you didn't crumble. You corrected the error, updated the deck, and came back a week later with better work. That mattered. You get assigned to a project with a tight deadline and a stakeholder who doesn't believe in data. They have opinions, strong ones. They want you to find numbers that support what they already think. You don't do that. You show them what the data actually says. They push back. You hold your ground, respectfully, calmly, with 3 different charts that all say the same thing. They don't like the answer, but they accept it. That's the job. Not just finding the truth, making people accept it when they'd rather not. Level 5, Lead Data Analyst. 6 years in, $138,000. You have a team now. 3 analysts. All of them are smart. One of them is smarter than you were at their level. You notice that. Invest in that one intentionally without letting the others know. You spend less time analyzing and more time reviewing. You read other people's work, find the gaps. The math gaps, those are easy. Thinking gaps. Places where an analyst pulled the right numbers but asked the wrong question. That's harder to teach than SQL. Calendar is 60% meetings now. You used to hate meetings, still hate meetings. But you've learned to make them useful. You come prepared. You leave with decisions. You don't let a meeting end without clarity on what happens next. One of your analysts misses a deadline. You find out through the stakeholder, not through them. That's the conversation you dread. You have it anyway. You're direct, not cruel, direct. You explain that surprises are worse than bad news. Bad news can be managed. Surprises destroy trust. They improve. That matters more than being right. You're being measured differently now, not on your personal output, on what your team produces. That shift is uncomfortable until it isn't. Level 6, Analytics Manager, years. $158,000. People think the manager title is an upgrade. In some ways it is. In other ways, it is a completely different job that you were never trained for. You now manage 5 people's careers, their growth, their morale, their raises, whether they stay or leave. One person on your team is struggling, not with the work, with the environment. They feel undervalued. They're right. The company hasn't given them a meaningful project in 3 months. You fight for one. You win. They stay. You won't always win. Another person is clearly on their way out. You can feel it before they say anything. The energy shift, the slightly longer response times, the way they answer in meetings. You pull them aside. You ask directly. They're interviewing elsewhere. You don't guilt them. You ask what would make them want to stay. Sometimes you can offer it. Sometimes you can't. They leave. You hire someone new. The process takes 3 months. You present to senior leadership every quarter now. They ask aggressive questions. They want certainty. Data rarely gives you certainty. You explain probability and confidence intervals to a room full of people who want a yes or a no. You get better at this. You learn to translate uncertainty into decision-relevant language without dumbing it down. That's a rare skill. Most people never get there. Level 7, Director of Analytics. 10 years, $185,000. You've stopped thinking about individual analyses. You think in systems now. What does the entire analytics function look like in 2 years? Where are the gaps? Where are we spending effort that isn't producing insight? You manage a budget, real budget, tooling, headcount, infrastructure. A vendor comes in with a pitch for a new BI platform. It costs $400,000 a year. You have to decide if it's worth it. You don't just evaluate features. You evaluate total cost of migration, training time, productivity dip during transition, and whether the gain justifies the disruption. You say no. They come back with a 20% discount. You still say no. That decision saves the company $400,000. No one sends you an email about it. You've accepted that most of your best work is invisible. Prevented problems, avoided waste, decisions that never went wrong because you caught something early. Invisible work is still work. You're in a different kind of battle now, not with data, with organizational inertia, getting people to actually use analytics, getting teams to build the right metrics before they launch, not 6 months after, getting leadership to ask questions before they decide instead of after. Culture change is slower than any data pipeline you've ever built. Level 8, Senior Director / Head of Data. 13 years, $210,000. Sit at the table where strategy happens, not analytics strategy, company strategy, where to grow, to cut, to build. You are the person who says, here is what the data tells us about this decision. Sometimes you say, data doesn't tell us anything definitive here. This is a judgment call. Here are the risks. Both statements are equally important. You had to learn that the hard way. Early in your career, you believed that enough data could answer any question. Can't. Some things are genuinely uncertain. Being honest about that is part of the job. You've built something real. A team of 20 people who wouldn't exist without you hiring them, developing them, pushing for budget and headcount. Some of them will run analytics functions of their own someday. You've made hiring mistakes. You've given people opportunities they weren't ready for. You've promoted based on potential and been wrong. You don't stop taking those bets. You get better at reading people. The loneliest part of this level is that there's no one at the company who truly understands what you do. Executives think in business terms. The engineers think in technical terms. You're somewhere in between, doing translation work that nobody sees as a full job. You know it's a full job. Level 9, VP/Chief Data Officer, 15 years, $260,000 plus equity. Your title is on the website. People reach out on LinkedIn. People who want advice, want jobs, want access. You respond selectively. You learn to protect your time because no one else will protect it for you. You report to the CEO. Those conversations are different than any you've had before. Short, high stakes. The CEO doesn't want process. They want clarity. Where are we? Where are we going? What do we not know that we should? You give them that concisely, without hedging more than necessary. You've watched companies make catastrophic decisions because they ignored their data. You've watched companies make catastrophic decisions because they trusted their data too much. You've watched watched analysts with perfect methodology fail because they couldn't communicate, and mediocre analysts succeed because they told a story. That used to bother you. Now it just informs how you build teams. You hire for judgment as much as skill. You can teach someone DBT. You can't teach them to know which question is worth asking. You've had to let go of control. Your team runs analyses you'll never read. They make calls you'll never weigh in on. Your job is to make sure the system produces good work, not to personally guarantee every output. Trusting the system you built is harder than building it. Level 10, the exit ramp or the legacy. 18 years. What comes next is different for everyone. Some people take the seat at a smaller company where they can own something completely. Some go independent, consulting, advisory work, projects on your own terms. Some build something, product, a course, a firm. Some stay. They become the person the company refuses to let go, the institutional knowledge carrier, the one who remembers why decisions were made. That's a kind of power too. What nobody tells you about getting here is that the hardest part isn't the work. It was never the work. The hardest part was the decade where you weren't sure if you were good enough, when the feedback was scarce and the growth felt invisible, and the gap between where you were and where you wanted to be felt permanent. It wasn't permanent. It just felt that way on the days when the query wouldn't run, and the stakeholder was frustrated, and the deadline was tomorrow, and you were staring at a blank screen, wondering if you actually knew what you were doing. You did. You just needed time to prove it to yourself. And now you have.